You have $1,650,000. You are sitting in a guard booth that is 4 feet by 6 feet, and the space heater under the counter is ticking because it is 5:52 in the morning and the temperature outside is 34 degrees. The property manager walks past the booth for the second time this month and calls you the new guy. You have worked here for 21 years. You do not correct her. You write her name down in the log, visitor, 5:52 a.m., badge 4471, and you slide the window shut, and you go back to your thermos. It is the same thermos you have had since 2014. Stainless steel, dented on one side from the time it rolled off the console of your 2011 Honda Fit in a Wendy's parking lot in Streator, Illinois. The dent is still there. You never got a new one. There was no reason to get a new one. It still holds coffee. Your net worth is $1,650,000. You are 35 years old. Nobody who has ever handed you their ID at this gate knows that number exists. The guard booth smells like burnt coffee and pencil shavings. You have a clipboard with a sign-in sheet that has not changed format since you started. You have a small black and white monitor showing camera 4, the loading dock, which has not moved in the 11 minutes you have been watching it. You have a granola bar in your jacket pocket that you will eat at 9:15, not before, because that is the schedule you set for yourself in 2019 and never revised. The 2011 Honda Fit is parked in spot 212, the employee lot, nose out, the way you have always parked it, because nose out means you can leave 4 seconds faster at the end of a shift, and 4 seconds, over 21 years, adds up to something you have never bothered to calculate, because you already know the number that matters, and it is $1,650,000. You bought the Fit used in March of 2013. 61,000 miles on it. Paid $8,900 cash, out of an envelope, at a dealership on Route 6 that does not exist anymore. It now has 214,000 miles on it. The check engine light came on in October and you drove it to the mechanic 2 blocks from the guard booth, a man named Dwayne who has fixed this car 11 times, and Dwayne said it was a sensor, $40, and you said fix it, and you did not think about it again. You have worked the same gate since you were 14. That is not exactly true. You were hired at 14, you did not work the gate at 14. You worked the gate starting at 14 in 1 month, because there was a 2-week training period where you shadowed a man named Ellis who retired the following spring and never came back to say goodbye. You have been the one behind the glass since then. 2 decades. The property manager who called you the new guy is the 4th property manager you have worked under. The other 3 are gone. You are still there. You have been forgotten by name twice, once in 2019, when a new regional supervisor called you Kevin for 6 weeks straight, and your name is not Kevin, and you never corrected him either, and once this year, in March, when the new manager filled out a maintenance request and wrote gate attendant in the field where your name should have gone. You saw the form. You said nothing. You filed it. This is not a story about being invisible because nobody sees you. It is a story about being invisible on purpose, because you built it that way, one Tuesday at a time, for 21 years, until the number in your brokerage account stopped being real to anyone but you. Here is what nobody in this parking structure knows. You have $1,650,000. $490,000 of that is the equity in a house you bought in 2016 for $1,650,000 and have not renovated once, the same laminate counters, the same beige carpet in the hallway, the same water heater from the previous owner that you have serviced but never replaced. $520,000 of it sits in a retirement account you have not touched since your first contribution in March of 2013, the same month you bought the Fit, the same month you decided, on a Tuesday, for reasons that had nothing to do with ambition, that you would put 11% of every paycheck somewhere you could not see it. The rest is spread across a taxable brokerage account, a high-yield savings account you check once a quarter, and $11,000 in cash you keep in a fireproof box in the crawl space, which is not a number that impresses anyone, but it is a number that lets you sleep. You do not tell people this. Not because you are ashamed of it. Because telling people changes the way they look at you, and you like the way they look at you now, which is to say they do not look at you at all. The psychology of this is not complicated, and it is not a secret you are protecting because it is fragile. It is a decision you made early, and you have never had a reason to unmake it. Money, to you, was never a scoreboard. You grew up in a house where money was a weapon. Your father used it to control, your mother used it to apologize, and by the time you were 17 you understood that the people who talked the most about money were usually the people who had the least control over it. So you decided, quietly, that you would be the opposite. You would have money and never mention it. You would let the number grow in a place nobody could see, and you would let your life stay exactly the same size it was before the number existed. This is the part people get wrong about wealth. They think the goal is the mansion, the new car, the recognition. You watched that model fail for other people your whole life, coworkers who got a raise and immediately financed a truck they couldn't afford, cousins who inherited $40,000 and had nothing left within 14 months, guys at the gym talking about their portfolio the same week their car got repossessed. You watched money turn into a costume for people who needed one. You decided you did not need a costume. You needed a number that meant you never had to ask anyone for anything again. That is the actual definition of wealth, for you. Not luxury. Leverage. The ability to say no. The ability to sit in a guard booth for another 5 years, or not, and have it be a choice instead of a sentence. Freedom, in your case, does not look like a yacht. It looks like knowing that if the property management company folded tomorrow, if the whole structure was sold to a developer and the gate was torn down, you would go home, make coffee, and figure out your next move without a single moment of panic. Most of the people who walk through your gate every day could not survive 3 missed paychecks. You could survive 20 years of them. You hide the number because visibility invites a version of yourself you do not want to perform. The moment people know you have $1,650,000, you become the rich guard, a punchline, a curiosity, a target for 100 different asks, the guy your cousin calls when his rent is short, the guy your coworker jokes with about letting him win the office pool, the guy people start being nice to in a way that feels different from before. You have seen it happen to other people. A coworker 2 properties over $160,000 in a settlement in 2021, and within a year he was estranged from half his family over loans he never should have made. You do not want that story. You would rather sit behind the glass, forgotten twice, than become anyone's emergency fund. There is also a simpler reason, one you don't examine too hard because it does not need examining. You genuinely like your life the way it is. You like the 2011 Honda Fit because it starts every morning and asks nothing of you. You like the guard booth because the hours are quiet and the pressure is low and you have had 21 years to think, uninterrupted, about compounding interest, expense ratios, and the exact grocery list you need for the week, which rarely changes, because you shop the same aisles at the same store on the same day, because routine is not a limitation, it is the whole engine. The system you built is not exciting, and it was never supposed to be. It started on a Tuesday in March of 2013, not because you had a plan, but because a coworker named Priya, who worked the day shift before transferring to a different property, mentioned offhand in the break room that the company matched retirement contributions up to 4% and almost nobody signed up for it. You had never thought about retirement. You were 22. But something about free money going unclaimed bothered you in a specific, almost physical way, the way an unfilled form bothers you now. You went to HR the next morning before your shift and signed the paperwork. 11% of your check, automatically withdrawn, before you ever saw it. That was the entire strategy. Not timing the market. Not picking hot stocks. Removing the decision entirely so you never had the chance to talk yourself out of it. For the first 4 years, the account grew slowly, almost insultingly slowly. $1,900 in year 1. $4,400 by the end of year 2. You did not check it often, because checking it did nothing but tempt you to touch it, and touching it was the one rule you would not break. In 2015, you opened a second account, a taxable brokerage, and started putting in $180 a month, whatever was left after rent, gas for the fit, and groceries. You did not pick individual stocks. You bought the same low-cost index fund every month, on the same day, the 15th, whether the market was up or down, because you had read in a library book, not a course, not a seminar, a library book you found in the personal finance section of the branch 2 miles from your apartment, that trying to time the market was how amateurs lost money, and consistency was how boring people won. The house came in 2016. $1,650,000, a 3-bedroom with a leaking gutter and a kitchen from 1994, in a town most people your age were leaving, not moving to. You put $23,000 down, money you had saved not by earning more but by refusing to upgrade anything, same phone for 4 years, same furniture from your first apartment, no cable, no gym membership because you ran the maintenance stairwell of the parking structure 3 mornings a week instead, for free, before your shift started. Your mortgage payment was $612 a month. You never once considered refinancing into a bigger house, even after the market shifted and your equity tripled. A bigger house meant a bigger mortgage, bigger property taxes, a bigger version of a life you had already built to be small on purpose. The real engine, the part nobody sees, was the raise strategy or the absence of one. Every time you got a cost of living increase, every time a new contract came through and your hourly rate went up by 40 cents, 60 cents, once by $1.10 in 2020 during a wage adjustment for essential workers, you did not adjust your spending. You increased your retirement contribution percentage instead. By 2018 you were contributing 14%. By 2021, 17%. Your take-home pay, adjusted for inflation, barely moved in 8 years. Your investment contributions nearly quadrupled. This is the part that sounds impossible to people who have not lived it and completely obvious to people who have. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only number that has ever mattered, and you spent 2 decades making that gap wider instead of making your income louder. Year 1 was not glamorous, and it was not supposed to be. It was 2013, and you were 22, working a gate shift that started at 5:30 a.m., which meant waking up at 4:40, which meant you stopped going out on Friday nights almost immediately, not as a sacrifice, just as a practical fact. You could not be useful at the booth on 4 hours of sleep, and being useful at the booth was the only thing standing between you and unemployment. Your friends from high school were going to bars in the city, posting pictures you saw on your phone during your 9:15 break, and for a while it stung, the specific sting of watching people your age do things you were choosing not to do. You told yourself it was temporary. You did not know yet that it would become permanent, and that the permanence would eventually stop feeling like a sacrifice and start feeling like a preference. The doubts came in waves, usually around tax season, when you'd see the total contribution for the year laid out in black and white, $2,100, $2,400, and compare it, unfairly, to what a single influencer or coworker seemed to be spending on a vacation. In March of 2014 you almost stopped. You sat in the fit in the employee lot during your lunch break and did the math on what would happen if you dropped your contribution back to the 4% match and used the difference to finally fix the exhaust rattle that had been bothering you for 6 months. You did the math twice. Both times it came out the same. The rattle would cost $340 to fix. The 4% contribution you'd be giving up would cost you roughly $1,650,000 by retirement, assuming average market returns, assuming you kept working, assuming nothing went wrong. You drove home with the rattle. You fixed it 18 months later, out of a different envelope, one that existed specifically for things like that, because by then you had learned to build separate envelopes for separate purposes instead of raiding the one envelope that mattered. By the end of year 1, the number in your retirement account was $6,240. It did not feel like anything. It felt like a rounding error compared to what your coworkers seemed to be spending on Christmas, on car payments, on the things that made a life look, from the outside, like it was going somewhere. You did not tell anyone the number. Not because it was impressive, it wasn't, not yet, but because you had already, without fully deciding to, started treating the account like something private, almost sacred, a thing that existed outside the version of you that clocked in and out of the guard booth. The first real milestone came in October of 2015, 2.5 years in. You crossed $20,000 across your combined accounts on a Tuesday. You remember it was a Tuesday because Tuesdays were payroll days, and you'd gotten into the habit of checking the balance every other Tuesday, exactly twice a month, no more. You sat in the booth on your break, looked at the number on your phone, and felt nothing you could name as triumph. It was quieter than that. It was more like relief. Proof that the boring thing was actually working, that the 11% you never saw was becoming something real, something with a shape. You did not celebrate. You ate your granola bar, 15 minutes early that day, and went back to the window. By year 5, in 2018, the number had stopped being fragile. It had started to snowball in a way that felt almost separate from your effort. The returns on the returns were now larger some months than your entire monthly contribution, which was a strange thing to sit with in a 4x6 booth making $17.40 an hour. You crossed $1,650,000 combined in June of that year, and for the first time, you noticed a shift that had nothing to do with the number itself. You stopped worrying, even slightly, about small emergencies. When the Fit needed a new transmission mount in August, $410 at Dwayne's shop, you paid it without checking your other accounts, without a flicker of anxiety, because you had built, without naming it, a system where money problems below a certain size simply stopped registering as problems. Nobody around you noticed anything different, because nothing around you was different. You still parked in spot 212, nose out. You still wore the same 3 jackets in rotation through the winter. You still bought the store brand coffee, the one in the yellow can, because you'd done a blind taste test with yourself in 2016 and genuinely could not tell the difference, and paying triple for a name brand felt, to you, like paying for a story rather than a product. The only person who might have noticed a change was Dwayne, who mentioned once, fixing the transmission mount, that you always paid in exact cash and never once asked for a payment plan, and you said something non-committal, and he let it go, because Dwayne was not the type to pry. Internally, though, something had shifted that no camera on your monitor bank could have picked up. You stopped reading your investment statements with anxiety and started reading them the way other people read the weather, informational, not emotional. You stopped comparing your progress to anyone else's, not because you'd achieved some enlightened detachment, but because you'd simply lost interest in the comparison. The guy 2 gates over leased a new truck in 2019, and where once that might have stirred something competitive in you, it now registered as almost quaint, a choice you understood but no longer felt the pull of. You also, quietly, began teaching yourself more, not out of ambition, but out of the same instinct that made you sign the retirement paperwork in the first place, the instinct that hated waste. You read about expense ratios and moved a chunk of an old, higher fee fund into something cheaper, saving yourself an estimated $60,000 over the following 2 decades for maybe 6 hours of research spread across a few slow night shifts. You opened a health savings account in 2019 after reading that it was, for people in your bracket, functionally a second retirement account with better tax treatment. Nobody suggested this to you. There was no mentor, no financial advisor, no wealthy uncle. There was a library card, a slow internet connection in the guard booth between rounds, and 2 decades of Tuesdays. By the end of year 5, your combined net worth, including the equity building quietly in the $1,650,000 house, crossed $1,650,000. You told no one. Your mother, who still occasionally asked if you were doing all right out there, received the same answer she always did, that the job was fine, the hours were fine, everything was fine, which was true, in the specific and narrow way you meant it, even though it left out the number that would have changed the entire shape of the conversation. By year 10, in 2023, the number crossed $1,650,000 for the first time, and you remember exactly where you were when you saw it, because it was not dramatic at all. You were in the booth at 6:40 a.m., camera 4 still showing nothing, the space heater still ticking, and you checked the app on your phone during the normal Tuesday check, and there it was, 7 figures, sitting quietly on a screen the size of your palm. You did not gasp. You did not call anyone. You put the phone back in your jacket pocket, next to where the granola bar would go at 9:15, and you went back to the sign-in sheet, because a delivery truck was pulling up and someone needed a badge. The retirement account alone, by that point, held $1,650,000, a number you'd watched grow in silence for a decade, untouched, unglamorous, the single largest line item in a net worth that had, by now, quietly climbed to $1,650,000 once you counted the house, the brokerage account, the savings, And the $11,000 still sitting in the fireproof box in the crawl space, which you had never once needed to open. You still drive the 2011 Honda Fit. It has 214,000 miles on it now, and Dwayne says it has another 50,000 in it if you keep up with the maintenance, and you intend to. You still park in spot 212, nose out. You still buy the yellow can coffee. You are 35 years old, sitting in a 4x6 booth that smells like burnt coffee and pencil shavings, and the new property manager still does not know your name, and the number in your accounts is $1,650,000, and not one single person who has handed you their ID this year has any idea. This is not a story about a guard booth. It is a story about what happens when you decide, on an ordinary Tuesday, that you would rather be quietly free than visibly rich, and you never once revisit that decision, for 21 years, no matter who forgets your name. If this story resonated with you, subscribe. I post a new story every single day. If you want to start investing today, the Robinhood link is in the description. It comes with a free stock. And if you want the weekly letter, the Quiet Wealth letter, that link is there too. See you tomorrow.